strictly true crime content from a true crime book. If that catches any of your interest, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Shout out to the first comment winner, Paula Taylor. It says, "You're back. That's awesome. Can't wait to watch." Thank you so much for your support. And if you want to be the first comment winner, or if you want to be featured in my next video, comment down below being the first one to comment, and you can be featured in my next video. Let's go ahead and get started. I am reading from my true crime book. You guys already know. So let's get into today's video. Sit back, relax, grab a snack, and enjoy some crime time. Warning, this video may contain details of graphic content. This channel is for mature audiences only. Some viewers might find this disturbing. It was a rainy Friday afternoon, April 13th, 2012, when Brittany Kilgore Rest began packing her bags. Brittany's online profile name was, quote, 13's my lucky number, end quote. But this Friday the 13th was going to be anything but lucky. Okay, this story is already like juicy a little bit. Just 3 days earlier, she had filed for divorce from her husband, Lance Corporal Corey Kilgore. Corey had been a Marine stationed at Camp Pendleton, just north of San Diego, but had recently been transferred for a tour of duty in Afghanistan, leaving Brittany alone in the small military town of Fallbrook, California. As a teenager, Brittany had dreamed of marriage and wrote about it on her blog. This is what she said, quote, "I want to be married. I want to love that person, but the divorce rate is so high," end quote. She also wrote candidly of her insecurities and struggles with depression. 3 years later, she was married, but the marriage wasn't what she hoped it would be. Both Brittany and Corey were only 20 when they married, but by the time they were 22, they mutually called it quits. Feel like she gonna hurt this man. Fallbrook was a small town that sat immediately east of the entrance to U.S. Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton, with a population of just 30,000 people. Most of the town was comprised of military families. Brittany lived at the La Galenia de Cortez, y'all, I'm not good at Spanish, apartments in a small upstairs apartment, just a short walk from the entrance to the base. She had grown up in the Ozarks in Missouri, but her family had since moved to Pennsylvania. Once her divorce was finalized, she would have no reason to stay in the military town. So on that rainy afternoon, she and her friend Jenny Tall were packing boxes for her to move to Pennsylvania. The same afternoon, another of Brittany's friends, Elizabeth Hernandez, had stopped by the home of Dorothy M. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. And Louise Perez to return a camera charger she had borrowed. In casual conversation, Elizabeth mentioned that her friend Brittany was moving away from Fallbrook. She told Dorothy that she was planning to take her to the marina in San Diego and treat her to hornblower dinner cruise before she left. Dorothy was familiar with Brittany. In fact, she had a deep hatred of the girl. Although she barely knew her, Dorothy often called Brittany, quote, the disease, or the herpes. That's not very nice. Dorothy was in a polygamous open relationship with U.S. Marine Staff Sergeant Louise Perez, a 16-year veteran of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing Station at Camp Pendleton. The couple had agreed 45-year-old Perez. She often asked Elizabeth why she hung out with Brittany at all, and once jokingly told her, quote, "I could get rid of her for you," end quote. Yikes. Dorothy M. and Louise Perez's relationship was far from normal. The fact that their relationship was polygamous, however, may have seemed like the most normal part of the relationship. The two lived as master and slave in a twisted BDSM relationship. For years, Perez lived as the dominant master of the household, while Dorothy lived as the submissive slave. Dorothy was also a switch, meaning she was submissive to Perez, but will also be a dominant mistress to her own slaves. Together, the two of them took part in their BDSM lifestyle with their live-in slave, Jessica Lopez. Each participant in the three-way relationship had their respective BDSM names. Louis Perez was Ivan, Dorothy M. was Dee, and Jessica Lopez was Rosaline. Within the household, Dorothy established strict written rules, including the house manual, perfect slave checklist, and a slave contract. Dorothy, aka Dee, also had a contract that professed her as the sole property of Perez, who is Ivan. The contract, entitled Deed to Dee, was signed in Dorothy's bloody thumbprint. The vanity license plate on Dorothy's truck read, quote, IVNSKTN, end quote, which is abbreviated as Ivan's Kitten. Dorothy M. controlled everything that Jessica Lopez, Rosaline, did in life, both inside the home and out. Jessica wore a red dog collar at all times with a heart-shaped dog tag engraved with the text, Rosaline, property of Misty. Okay, that's taking it way too far. Way too far. She ate her meals out of a dog bowl. Louis, however, as Dee's master, had control over both Dorothy and Jessica. Louis Perez was a sadist. He lived to inflict pains on others. In prior relationships, he had choked his partner every time they had sex, either with his hands or with a leather belt. Occasionally, he suggested having his slaves kidnapped by strangers, held prisoner, and tortured. Knives and chains were common intercourse toys in his relationships. Perez kept videos of himself beating women as they begged him to stop. One such video showed him beating a woman into unconsciousness. On another occasion, Perez and Dorothy acted out an abduction fantasy where they picked up a young woman in a parking lot and took her to their dungeon in the basement of Dorothy's home for BDSM play. This is all in quotation marks, y'all. Later that rainy Friday at 4:38 p.m., Louis Perez knocked on the door of Brittany's apartment as she and Janie were packing boxes. It surprised Brittany to see him, considering she barely knew him, and she asked how he knew where she lived. He replied, "I asked around." Perez explained that position and politely declined his offer, explaining that she needed to pack up boxes for our move. Perez wrote down his phone number and handed it to her. On the note, it said, "Call me if you change your mind." When Perez left the apartment complex, he sent a text to Dorothy reading, quote, "That wasn't successful." She replied, quote, "Tomorrow is another day." Just minutes later, Perez got a text message from Brittany. She wanted to know if he knew anyone that could help her with her move. Perez was quick to reply, quote, "Party with me tonight, and you'll have 5 guys there in the morning," end quote. Still uncomfortable, Brittany messaged him saying that she would love having help with her move, but felt weird partying with him because she knew he was in a relationship with Dorothy. He replied, quote, "She's okay with it. Here's her phone number. Give her a call." Brittany sent a brief text to Dorothy, who immediately called her back. On the speakerphone, Brittany's friend Jenny heard the conversation. Dorothy encouraged her to go on the dinner cruise with Perez. See, that would make me a little suspicious. Like, why do y'all want me to go along with you? Like, so bad. She told her they'd already paid for the tickets and explained that as she was pregnant with Perez's baby, being on a boat would probably make her seasick anyway. This is so many red flags. After hanging up with Dorothy, Brittany told Jenny that she still didn't feel entirely comfortable. See, listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. If you don't feel comfortable with doing something, don't do it. No matter how many people persuade you or try to persuade you to do it. She didn't feel entirely comfortable with it and had no interest in Perez romantically, but really liked the idea of champagne and a 3-course meal sailing on a yacht beneath the Corona, the Bay Bridge. By 6:10 p.m., Brittany had changed her mind. She sent a text to Perez agreeing to go with them, to which he quickly responded, quote, "Be ready at 7:30. What Brittany didn't know was that the Hornblower dinner cruise left the dock at 7 p.m. and the dock was an hour away from Fallbrook. There was no chance they would make it, but that didn't matter. Perez never had tickets, nor any intention on taking her on the cruise. He had other plans. Brittany borrowed 2 evening dresses from Jenny for the dinner cruise and decided on a darker purple one with a glittery purple flower pattern. Still feeling awkward about the situation, she gave Jenny the cell phone numbers of both Perez and Dorothy just in case. At 6:38 p.m., Brittany messaged Elizabeth Hernandez to let her know about her date with Perez. Elizabeth was confused. She had planned on being the one to take Brittany on the dinner cruise as a gift. She had even mentioned her intentions to Perez and Dorothy earlier in the day. She also thought it was strange because she knew that Brittany barely knew Perez. Brittany received a text at 7:31 p.m. from Perez, quote, "I'm running late. Be there in 5 minutes. Can you meet me at the curb?" end quote. Brittany replied, quote, "At the curb, it's raining. You know, I appreciate it if you drove into the complex." "It's not. I don't want to miss our boat," Perez responded. He knew there were security cameras throughout the complex and wanted to avoid them, but drove through anyway at 7:36 p.m. Surveillance cameras showed his white Ford Explorer entering the complex. 1 minute later, he texted, quote, "I'm here." At 7:39 p.m., Brittany messaged another friend, Jessica Berry, that lived in her same apartment complex. Quote, "I'm going on a dinner cruise with Luis Perez tonight. I might stop by to see you when I get back." End quote. 1 minute later, the apartment security cameras showed the Explorer leaving the apartment complex with Brittany in the passenger seat. Just 10 minutes after Brittany left the apartment complex, Cheney received a one-word text message from Brittany's phone. It simply read, "Help." At approximately the same time, Perez messaged Dorothy, quote, "Kitten." The message gave Cheney Doll a sudden twinge of fright. She immediately replied to Brittany, "What? Are you okay?" There was no reply, so she messaged again. Message, I will call 911. I'm sorry. "Brittany, are you okay? I'm freaking out here." Still no reply. Cheney messaged one more time before she finally got a reply at 8:05 p.m. Quote, "Yes, I love this party." End quote. Cheney knew the reply was not genuine. Brittany would never have used the word "yes" in a text message. She had always just used "yeah." After trying to call Brittany several times with no answer, Cheney sent another message demanding her to call back. "Call me back now. I need to hear your voice." Cheney received another text and a few hot guys. Cheney was certain this wasn't Brittany and insisted that she call her immediately. At 8:09 and 8:10, Cheney received two short phone calls. Both calls were only a few seconds long, with loud music in the background. The calls were followed by another text message, quote, "It's okay, music too loud," end quote. Over the next several minutes, Cheney contacted Brittany's other friends, Jessica Berry and Elizabeth Hernandez. After trying Brittany's phone with no answer, Elizabeth called Perez's girlfriend, Dorothy. Dorothy M. told Elizabeth she knew nothing about a dinner cruise and hadn't spoke to Brittany at all that day. An obvious lie. At 8:40 p.m., Jessica Berry called Perez, who answered the call. He told Jessica that he and Brittany had driven to downtown San Diego and went to the Whiskey Girl Club in the Gas Lamp District. He told her that Brittany had met a couple of Marines there, and he left her there. Jessica Berry knew this couldn't possibly be true. That would have been completely out of character for Brittany. The truth was that she never made it out of Fallbrook. Luis Perez and Dorothy M. took efforts to cover their tracks. Dorothy had worked for a cell phone company in the past and knew that cell phones were traceable. She instructed Perez to drive toward downtown San Diego with Brittany's phone. During the drive, he sent text messages to her phone reading, quote, "Where are you? And your friends are calling me worried." He also messaged Dorothy asking how her night was going, to which she replied, quote, "Just having a quiet night at home." At 10:10 p.m., Cheney tried to call Brittany one more time, but when she got no response, she sent a text, quote, "Should I just call the cops?" End quote. The hell, you should have been dead. Sorry. Cheney received a text reply, "I'm okay." Perez then dumped Brittany's phone on the streets of downtown San Diego. As he drove back to Fallbrook from San Diego, Perez called Brittany's friend Jessica Berry, trying to establish an alibi. He told her he had been driving around the Gas Lamp District looking was agonizing for Jenny, Elizabeth, and Jessica Perry. There was still no word from their friend. Jessica called Dorothy and told her she had lied to her. She knew that she had spoken to Brittany the previous day. Nervous, Dorothy stammered an excuse and handed the phone to Perez. He hadn't planned his alibi very well and mumbled several conflicting scenarios of what had happened the previous night. Janie and Elizabeth went to Brittany's apartment, but there was no trace of her, and they called the sheriff's department. Finally, they called the sheriff. Finally. I probably would have sent 2 text messages, maybe 3, and then no response, or I didn't feel right. I would have called the police immediately. When the sheriff's deputy called Perez, he was clearly startled, but offered to come to Brittany's apartment to talk. When Perez arrived at the apartment, Janie and Elizabeth were still there speaking to the deputy. Perez claimed that when he had picked Brittany up that night, she had already been drinking and was very flirty with him. Janie and Elizabeth immediately rebuffed this and let the deputy know that that was a lie. Perez claimed that he had left Brittany at a club in the gas lamp district where she flirted with a few Marines. He said that when he couldn't find her, he texted her before he left, and she replied with a text saying, quote, "I'm okay." The deputy's suspicion grew when he asked Perez to show him the text on his phone, but the text wasn't there. There was also the question of his white Ford Explorer parked outside. The bumper and the running board of the vehicle were caked with mud. The deputy asked for his consent to a voluntary search of the vehicle, and Perez agreed. Inside the vehicle was an AR-15 assault rifle, which he had been stolen from Camp Pendleton and was illegal in California. Perez was arrested on the weapons charge. That Saturday afternoon, Brittany's mother, Michelle Rest, got a phone call from her daughter's cell phone. A stranger on the other end of the phone explained that a homeless man had found her phone on the streets of San Diego and was attempting to sell it. Brittany's mother was unaware that her daughter was missing, but assumed the worst and called authorities. On April 15th, deputies began their search of the home at 317 East Fallbrook Street, where Louise Perez, Dorothy M., and Jessica Lopez lived. And Lopez stood in the front yard and watched. When police arrived the following day to continue the search, M and Lopez were gone, as M's truck. Detectives noticed that several items that were in the house the previous day had been removed. Law enforcement throughout Southern California were alerted to be on the lookout for M's Nissan Titan with the license plate Ivan's Kitten. Meanwhile, forensic teams were analyzing Perez's Ford Explorer. Inside his SUV, police found blue latex gloves, a large piece of clear plastic sheeting with smeared blood on it, a plastic bag, and a stun baton. Brittany Kilgore's DNA was found on the plastic sheeting and latex gloves. Perez's DNA was found on the strap and handle of the stun baton, while more of Brittany's DNA was found on the prongs. The morning of April 17th, M's truck was spotted in the parking lot of the Ramada Inn near the San Diego airport. According to the front desk, room 105 was registered to Dorothy M. When police knocked on the door, there was no answer, but officers could hear faint sounds. It sounded like the light cries of a woman. When the door was forced open, they found a half-naked woman only a red skirt. She was bleeding from several deep self-inflicted wounds on her neck and wrist. The bed sheets were soaked with blood. Several large knives and an orthodontic scalpel were found near the sink next to an empty bottle of liquor. At the foot of the bed was a red dog collar with a tag that read, "Rosaline, property of Miss D." It wasn't Dorothy, it was Jessica Lopez, Dorothy's slave. Lopez was rushed to the hospital and subsequently arrested. In the room was a clothes hanger above the vanity desk with a note clipped to it that read, "Pigs, read this." Below the note were 3 envelopes. One was addressed to Master Ivan, another to my parents, and the third was to a local television station. Each envelope contained a copy of a 7-page note penned by Lopez. It's the S word, the S note. In the S note, Lopez claimed it was her that killed Brittany, not Perez or M, stating, "You've got the wrong effing person." The letter claimed that M and Perez were asleep upstairs while she alone murdered Brittany. She described Brittany as a miserable cunt that came between Perez and M and went into detail of how she killed her. According to Lopez, she used a taser to knock her down, then restrained her legs and wrists before gagging her mouth. She then claimed to have tied a rope around her neck, where she repeatedly applied and released pressure until she was deceased. She then attempted to dismember her body with power tools, washed her body with bleach, and dumped her on the side of the road near Lake Skinner. Officers were immediately dispatched to the Lake Skinner area. Lopez's letter went on about her love for Dorothy M., her mistress. Using the hotel surveillance cameras, police were able to see that M had been in the room when Lopez wrote the notes. Lopez took the first copy of the note to the hotel receptionist to make the copies. M left the hotel that morning and boarded a plane to Virginia. Certain statements in the note, however, made no sense. Lopez wrote that the murder happened after 11:15 p.m. From the string of text messages, police already knew that was unlikely. Lopez also claimed that Brittany, who didn't drive, suddenly appeared at the house at 317 East of Fallbrook Street unannounced and demanded intercourse from Perez. Later that day, a maintenance worker clearing brush about a mile south of Lake Skinner found the nude body of Brittany Kilgore dumped in a ditch. The bruising on Brittany's wrist revealed that she had been bound with handcuffs. 5 small marks on the left side of her face were an exact match for the pins of a stun baton. Deep post-mortem wounds on her knees showed that someone had unsuccessfully attempted to dismember her body parts with a power saw. Okay, this is just describing how she lost her life, so I'm going to skip that. As a lead detective, Brian Patterson drove to the spot where the body was dumped. He received a call from Dorothy M., who was still on the run. Attempting to establish an alibi, she told him that she and Lopez were home that night and rented, quote, The Adventures of Renton. Patterson, however, was more interested in the flaws in both Perez's and Lopez's stories. When he questioned her on the inconsistencies, she hung up. 2 days after they found the body, police searched M's house once again. This time, they found a roll of plastic that Lopez mentioned in her note, and a blade from a reciprocating saw. Detectives also found several BDSM photos, videos, documents, intercourse toys, and bondage equipment. One document recovered was a release of liability form. It was a contract stating that Dorothy M. agreed to voluntarily endure Louis Paris's beatings, whippings, and asphyxia, and that he held no responsibility in the case of injuries or loss of life. They also found a document in which M released her anger to Perez, encouraging him to, quote, deliver justice on our behalf, end quote. The letter, riddled with strange spellings, was written by M on the day Brittany had been murdered. Quote, I do hereby give to Ivan all my grudges and revenge. I release my anger and entrust justice into Ivan's hands. I accept Ivan would decide, design, and dispense the measure of retribution he deems appropriate to my enemies, tormentors, and violators, end quote. Another document read, quote, please consider accepting this gift. I leave all methods of retribution to you. Please destroy them all. Inappropriately touch the women, destroy their reputation, take their possessions. When you deem, take their last breath. I release all I carry from I can't say the word, abusees and tormentors to you. I'll join in where you direct me and allow, but I realize my own will and agenda in those matters. Yet another document written by M detailed a fantasy she had of coming up behind a person and slitting their throat. Other items found in the house included nylon rope with hairs embedded in it, duct tape, plastic bags, a rope, and pulley system, a Black & Decker saber saw, and a red skill saw. Dorothy M. was arrested on May 10th, 2012, and returned to San Diego. Perez was still in custody on the weapons charge. All three suspects were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, torture, and attempted sexual battery by restraint. With the three defendants in custody, the prosecution began their analysis of the evidence to prepare for trial. Detectives found profiles for both Perez and M on BDSM websites, where Ivan described himself as Lord and Master, and he as slave, lover, confidant, and partner. On another website, he wrote, quote, I am Lord and Master, Doom and Daddy of my house. My slave, Miss D, is a slave to no one but myself, end quote. D's profile described herself as an alpha slave to Master Ivan, end quote. This is so freaking weird. So weird. Out of all of the stories I've covered, this has to be the weirdest one that I've read in this book. Their profiles showed that they were looking for additional sex slaves and other couples to join their family. Quote, we have a poly home in which I own 2 slave girls. Life is good. Poly is referring to a polyamorous relationship involving multiple sexual partners. In this case, one which is open to new individuals. Dorothy M. was pregnant with Perez's baby when police arrested her. Perez requested that when the baby was born, she give custody to a friend of his named Becky. Becky visited both Perez and M in prison regularly before the baby was born, and M agreed to give custody of the baby to Becky. According to M, the agreement was that she would continue to live in the San Diego area and bring the child in for weekly jail visits. When the baby was born, however, Becky took custody of the baby and moved to Central California. The prison visits stopped, as it should. You ain't think about no baby when you was committing that crime, so don't think about the baby now. M tried in vain to regain custody of the child and give custody to her family on the East Coast, but the courts sided with Becky. On one of Becky's visits to Perez, he admitted to her that, quote, everybody had a role to play that night, including myself. Although Perez later claimed he was referring to the cover-up and not the murder, that statement would later be used against all three of them in court. The prosecution had a dilemma. Jessica Lopez's confession letter was an important piece of evidence, but her intention was to exonerate Perez, and M. Introducing the letter into evidence was risky. They needed to establish that the letter was evidence of Lopez's guilt, but to also prove that it wasn't evidence that Perez and M were innocent. Another document that detectives seized was initially thought to be useless, as it was written in some sort of code. Using a forensic document examiner and the FBI, I don't know how to pronounce this word, cryptanalysis, I'm getting tongue-tied, unit to decipher the code. It revealed a detailed plan to kidnap, torture, and murder a friend of Jessica Lopez. Over 3,000 jury summons were mailed throughout San Diego County. During jury selection, potential jurors were warned of the unspeakable horrors they would hear of during testimony. During the jury selection process, many potential jurors broke down in tears and asked to be relieved of duty. The murder trial started on September 8th, 2015, and all three defendants were tried together. The prosecution was careful not to take Lopez's admission of the murder as absolute truth, and never indicted who exactly was responsible for Brittany's death. Instead, they placed equal blame on each defendant. Ultimately, it was cell phone records that were the key piece of evidence against the three of them. Cell phone data showed that Brittany did not show up at M's house unannounced. As Lopez claimed, the text messages that were sent to Brittany's friends that evening were all sent from inside M's house. Video evidence from the apartment complex also proved that Perez picked her up that evening and she never made it out of Fallbrook. She was taken straight to their home at 317 East Fallbrook Street. If I can find that house, I'll put a picture up on the screen. During the trial, Perez took the stand in his own defense. He admitted that he tricked Brittany into believing they were going on a dinner cruise. He also admitted that he took her cell phone to downtown San Diego and dumped it. He denied, however, the accusation that he dumped the phone to give Emma and Lopez more time to clean up the crime scene. Each defendant eventually turned on the other. Jessica Lopez claimed she was just playing the role of the obedient slave, and her only crime was writing the S/confession letter to protect her master and mistress. Dorothy M. claimed that because she was pregnant, she had put all of her BDSM activities on hold. She claimed that she only helped cover up the crime, and that Lopez was the sole killer. Perez also blamed Lopez, citing the confession letter. He argued that he only helped with the cover-up. The trial lasted 6 weeks, and the jury deliberated deliberated for 3 days. Eventually, the jury found Dorothy M. Luis Perez and Jessica Lopez, each guilty of first-degree murder, torture, and kidnapping. Perez and M were also found guilty of conspiracy to kidnapping. The death penalty was initially considered, but later ruled out. All three received 2 life sentences in California state prison without the possibility of parole. Dorothy M. writes on prisonwriters.com of her complaints of the California prison system, bemoaning her bunkmate's body odor, the bad food, and her attempts. Maybe she should have thought about that. Maybe she should have thought about what prison might be like before she snuffed out life of an innocent girl. Exactly. Years later, the house at 317 East Fallbrook Street fell into foreclosure. It later sold to a couple in their 30s for $212,000 who had no idea that there had been a savage murder in the house. I thought legally you were supposed to tell someone that's buying the house, like if there has been anything bad happening in that house. I thought that was a legal process, but maybe it's not. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do once they found out and kept the house despite its brutal history. That is the ending of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And thank you so much for watching the video again. I know I just said that, but I'm saying it again. Stay safe, stay blessed, and